Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining our Search Houses Now team Facebook page episode. I think it's episode probably 23 here. I'm getting a little bit lost just because we're home, we're working from home, and it's we're doing our best. So welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for you to be joining finally because I actually started following you a couple years ago. I think I either heard you on the radio or something. Someone was posting something about you on Facebook, and with me and like women empowerment and leadership, I'm like totally zoned in on that. And so I said,
Yeah.
I have to connect with this woman because she is so inspiring and she is so knowledgeable. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, no, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your business and yourself and kind of how you got into the financial business world or financial
Never,
advisor business world.
yeah, I never planned on being a financial advisor. If you would have told me 25 years ago that I'd be writing books and on TV and radio and helping people with their money, I would have not believed it at all. I wanted to be like Madeleine Albright or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I had lived over in Germany in high school and college and had fell in love with the UN, and I wanted to leave this huge legacy and make an impact. But that's what is cool, because I do know now I'm making an impact in people's lives. It's just related to inspiring them and helping them live their best full life with money. So a roundabout way, ended up in the financial services industry. I had sold Mary Kay Cosmetics. I started doing that in high school. And in college, I got together and I married someone right out of college. And his dream was to be a stockbroker back then. And he started working at Dean Witter in Wayzata, which became Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. And I sold Mary Kay to all the men in the office. And the branch manager pulled me aside and said, if you can sell makeup to men, you should be a financial
Oh
advisor.
my gosh. Wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm like, no, that's okay. Like, this is my husband's career. Like, I'm good. I'm going to go on to law school. And so enough branch managers told me I should be doing this. And I ended up then working for Northwestern Mutual Life as a recruiter. And they eventually had me take the test that I was giving to people as potential employees. And they're like, your score's off the chart. You should be great. And there's so many times in life that sometimes people see things in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself. And so I guess that's what it was. And I took the leap and just started studying, passed all the exams, became a financial advisor. And then fast forward, in 2003, left Morgan Stanley to start my own business. And I always knew I would own my own business. My mom owned her own business. I never was in daycare. My mom was a hairstylist and had a salon, and then she eventually put a salon in her home. And so I would lay there on the baby blanket, and I got to know her clients. And I knew I didn't know how I would be able to do all the things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to be an amazing mom and have balance, even though I hate that word, a great blend in my life.
Yeah.
And so fast forward now, Prosperwell Financial, my building's at 494 and 7 in Minnetonka. I bought that a little over a year ago, and we've got 7 people, and I run our private client group. So that's high net worth business owners, celebrities, professional athletes, but we help really anyone. That's where I just keep adding on advisors. We don't have minimums. We never will. And it just comes from my own story. I started working when I was 11 at the neighbor's daycare, in-home daycare, and I was paid 5 cents an hour, and then 10 cents an hour, and then a quarter. And I saved all that money. And when I turned 16, I would hear my mom and dad talking on the phone, and they would be talking about Intel stock and Microsoft. And the irony of it, they were talking to a stockbroker back then who was at Dean Witter in Wayzata. He was the dad of one of my figure skating friends, because I was a figure skater. And I'd hear my parents talking about Intel and Microsoft. I'm like, Mom, I had accumulated 10 grand. I'm like, Mom, can I take some of my $10,000 and invest it? And she's like, oh, honey, you need to have $100,000 to invest. So I went and studied abroad and went over to Germany, and I blew the 10 grand. I'm not saying that I regret any of that, because it was an amazing experience and I love studying abroad, but I probably wouldn't have needed the bank's help to buy my commercial building if I had bought some Intel stock and some Microsoft stock back then. So that's where we want to help inspire, motivate people. We don't have minimums. We want to help people get where they want to go in relation to financial planning, in relation to their investments, relation to their money.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell me about your book. Tell me more about your book.
Yeah. So growing up, like, when you're little, you have all these ideas and these things of, oh, I want to be a gymnastics coach. And, then I want to be president of the United States. And, oh, I want to be an anchor on TV. Well, one of my other things that I wanted to do was to write a book. I love to write. Later on, I was the editor of my school paper. And so I just love to write. Well, I started doing a radio show here. I did that for 5 years. And during the radio show, people would call in and ask questions related to money, and I'd give them answers. And so from that, people are like, well, do you have a book? Do you have a book? I'm like, I've always wanted to write one. And so I wrote one. Well, no one tells you once you write a book that you then need to keep writing them because once you write one, they're like, well, when's your next one coming up? When's your next one coming
Yes,
up?
they want more. They want more from you.
Exactly. So my fifth one came out just last year, and it's my favorite. I spent the most time on it, but it's also my favorite because it's different. Like the average financial advisor is a 59-year-old male. That's not me. And so my office has this feeling of like a spa or comfortable. Like I want to change and be just a really transformational in how people think about money. And so my book that came out, this last one, is titled Who Pays? Navigating Love and Money. And it came from the idea of my best friend from college. He's like, hey, Nick, he's like, there's no books on dating and money. Why don't you write one? I'm like, okay, well, I wasn't successful in my marriage. I've been single now for a while. Why don't I write a book on dating and money? So what I learned through the process, once I started researching, was a lot of clients kept telling me that I had saved their marriage. And so that's where I was like, wow, this is really cool. So chapter 9 of the book is all questions that you can sit down with your significant other or yourself and ask about money. And they can be anything from, what's your favorite money memory, to if you had $1 million, what would you do with it? If you won the lottery, or when do you want to retire? All these questions that sometimes cause you to pause, but you don't necessarily take the time to answer.
Oh, most definitely. Well, I will definitely have to get all of your books, and we'll definitely have to give away your new book to our friends and family here. And that's amazing. You have an amazing story, and I cannot wait for more people to tune in and really get to know and learn more about you. That's amazing.
Thanks. I just love helping people. Like we sent out an email out to our clients yesterday, and it was a video with me talking about what's going on, what should we be doing with our money, where's the economy, and the amount of people responding like, wow, like, thank you. And it's the second time that we've done a video, but I realize now I'm like, I need to do that more because it's just having that feeling of, money can be so intimidating and so overwhelming for people. And that's really my goal, is that it doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Money is simply a vehicle just to help you get where you want to go.
Exactly. Well, we deal with so many clients, from first-time home buyers to investors. And so right now we want to be able to communicate to all of our lifelong clients, what are some of the top things that, you yourself are communicating to your clientele, or just to your friends and family, like some of maybe like the top 3 or 5 things that are that you're communicating that are really important right now during our World Health event. So what are some of those tips that you're communicating?
The first thing is to don't panic.
Yes.
I used to always say, I just wrote an article about this, because I used to always say, separate your emotions from your finances. And
that's a good one. That is so good, because people do get so emotional regarding finances. I know I do. So
Yep. And women get touted that we're more emotional, but we're generally not so much when it comes to our money. And so that's where studies show women are better at investing than men.
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah. So I used to always say, don't, separate your emotions from your finances. But I wrote this article recently about, you've got to be careful with that phrase though. So yes, you want to separate your emotions from your finances, but you don't want to ignore them. And so if you have this feeling of anxiety or stress or sadness or panic, you want to first understand what that emotion is and sit with it and acknowledge it. Then push it aside so that you're able to make some rational decisions based upon the information that you have at the time and the decisions that make the most sense for you. And so the biggest thing is don't panic. The market's up, the market's down. That's always going to be what happens.
Yes.
It's just a lot more volatile, now recently.
Yes.
And so the biggest thing is don't panic, because the average investor buys high and sells low. And that's not what you want to do.
Right.
How you
Yeah.
can make
Yes.
money is by buying low and selling high. You are all aware of that in real estate.
Right.
And so what happens is people get so tied up with their emotion of like, they get their statement in the mail, or they go online and they look and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm down 50 grand or 100 grand or 500,000, whatever their dollar amount is. And they're like, oh, I got to do something. And sometimes the best thing to do is not necessarily anything at that moment, other than take an assessment of where you're at and understand your emotions and look at your overall package, your overall decisions. Like, we have had people that have made changes, but it's because other things have happened in their life. Medical issues, lost their job, decided to, with all of this, to retire earlier. And so those are the reasons to be making changes and decisions, not necessarily just because your statement goes down dramatically in value. So the biggest thing is don't panic.
Don't
The
panic.
second thing is have liquid money. I mean, this is the time now, like, I can never stress it enough. Any wealth advisor, we're going to tell you, you want to have 6 to 12 months of income set aside in liquid money. And right now is when it shows you, do you have enough or not? Because that's where most people don't have enough, because the government's having to send out checks to people because they don't have liquid money set aside. And so that's where it's really an awakening for a lot of people to say, okay, I need to prepare for the next what if of life that happens. Not that we're necessarily going to have a pandemic again, but the next situation of things that happen called life that you want to be prepared for, so that you make sure you have liquid money. And then it's also taking advantage of the stuff. The third thing is taking advantage of the stuff that's available to you. Taxes now have been delayed. You don't have to pay those till July 15th. Right. The other thing that I've never seen in my career that the government has done is also allowed us to add to our IRAs later as well. So you also now have till July 15th to add to your IRA. And being in real estate, you can add to the traditional or the Roth. Any one of us can do the 6 or 7 grand, depending upon our age. But in real estate, especially, realtors have this huge, amazing option to do the SEP IRA. And the SEP IRA is up to 25% of your net income. And it's totally deductible for you. So if you have not done your 2019 return and you're like, oh my gosh, 2019 was a great year, I need some tax deductions, you can take up to 25% of your net income and deduct that for you for last year. And you have until July 15th to get that money in. So it's taking advantage of everything that's available to you and making sure that you have a plan.
That is a great tip. I mean, I know that realtors are notorious for, even though they are asset managers, sometimes they put their financial goals behind. That is the last thing that they're doing because they're so involved with, trying to grow their business and transactional. And so that is a notorious thing that happens in this industry. And I say that just because we've learned it when we were younger.
Yep.
In the real estate business. So that is a really great tip.
Absolutely.
Yep. So definitely, 1 is don't panic. And then 2, also make sure that you have a liquid money,
Yep.
6 to 12 months. And then also being able to take advantage of what is available to you right now.
Yep.
One example is July 15th, being able to not have to pay into taxes until during that time. And then also what you mentioned, some of the tax deductible options right now for self-employed, or what you were talking about with the SEP IRA, so many options there. Yep. So that's awesome.
And then it's also just having a plan and really, I was talking to a client at the office today, and I was walking out the door and my assistant was on the phone going crazy, and she's like, oh my gosh. And we have so many people that we've reached out to, over the last year that didn't want to talk to us about their money. And now that the market is where it is, they're like, okay, I have time. Let me look at my finances. And so that's where it's look at your plan. And if you don't have a plan, now's the time to get one, to say, okay, are there some adjustments, or there's some decisions that I should make, or things that I should do differently, so that you can be in a better financial place 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, and that you can really use this as a platform to get where you want to go.
That's awesome. There are just some limiting beliefs and there are some fears and blockages to the point where people are just paralyzed into facing their money. And so, what do you suggest for those people that are listening right now that they know they have to clean it up? What do you say to them?
Yep. You've got to look back and think of your first money memory. And so for me, one of them, I mean, many of them, but one of them, I was in sixth grade and I was always in all the honors classes, the advanced placement classes. And I went to a private school. And in sixth grade, my teacher for math, the advanced teacher was gone for the day. So we were with the whole class and the teacher called me up because he's like, oh, we'll have one of our honors students come up and do the problem. So I go up to the chalkboard, write out the answer to the problem, and I go sit down. And I'm looking back at the chalkboard and I'm like, I noticed I did something wrong. And so I went to tell the teacher, like, I wanted to go up and correct it, and he wouldn't let me. And so the teacher then made a huge, big deal that I did the problem wrong, that I was this honors student, how could I do this problem wrong? And so it was at that moment that from that day forward, I was never in the honors advanced math again.
Wow.
And it was at that moment that I put a mental block on myself saying, oh my gosh, I can't do math. And a lot of times when people think, okay, I can't do math, that means I can't do money. Mm-hmm. And so we have to look at what are our money memories? How did we watch our mom and dad with money? How did we think about money? How do we think about money now? And if you're in a relationship, a lot of times, there's usually one person that's a spender, usually one person that's a saver. And so you've got to look at what makes the most sense for you and which one are you and where are you fitting with that. And so look at your money memories and how you were raised about money, because that sets a lot of your values and who you are as a person and what you think and your stereotypes that you have.
Wow, that's really profound. And that resonated with me. And I hope that resonates with everybody today that's going to be listening to you. Thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate you taking the time to spend a little bit of time and your wealth of knowledge. And I can't wait to showcase your book and share some of your stories into our family. So
thank you. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.